Welcome back to Haunt Narratives. We're diving into some chilling history tonight. Devil's Night in Detroit, a night known for, well, mischief and mayhem. Imagine, just picture this, the Detroit skyline at night, with hundreds of fires burning, an eerie orange glow over the entire city.
Yeah, it's a pretty terrifying thought.
And you know what's even more disturbing? People were drawn to it.
You mean the fire buffs, the ones who came from all over, even other states, just to see, well, the spectacle of destruction.
It's hard to understand that kind of morbid curiosity, right? I mean, what could draw someone to a scene of such, well, chaos and fear?
You know, for some people, fire has a strange allure to it. It's mesmerizing yet terrifying at the same time, a force of nature. And for those captivated by its destructive power, I guess, a city in flames, it becomes a spectacle they can't resist.
Right.
I mean, one of the sources you sent me even mentioned a guy, a data processing consultant named Kenneth Kiplinger, drove all the way from Illinois just to see the fires.
It's like they're drawn to the darkness, like moths to a flame. Literally.
Yeah. But, you know, it wasn't just morbid curiosity that fueled Devil's Night, right? There were deeper, darker forces at play, don't you think? Forces rooted in the city's history, its struggles, its despair.
Oh, absolutely. To understand Devil's Night, you have to understand Detroit in the 70s and 80s, a city dealing with poverty, urban decay, racial and economic tensions. It all created, this breeding ground for frustration and anger. And on Devil's Night, that anger, well, it found a terrifying outlet.
So it went beyond kids pulling pranks, right? Beyond soaping windows and throwing eggs. This was something far more sinister.
Exactly. Cranks turned into vandalism, and then ultimately arson. Abandoned buildings, they became targets, symbols of the city's decline. There are pictures in your source material. You should take a look. Whole blocks, once vibrant, now just empty husks, engulfed in flames. It's almost a visual metaphor, wouldn't you say, for the city's struggles.
Chilling. Absolutely chilling. Just the images alone are enough to give you chills. But as bad as it was, it got even worse, didn't it, in the 1980s? The 1980s, yeah. That's when it reached its peak. In 1984, there were a record 810 fires on Devil's Night. 810. Just imagine being a firefighter in Detroit that year, battling not one or two fires, but hundreds, night after night. The stories they tell, they're almost unbelievable.
So what happened? I mean, did the city just surrender to this night of terror?
No, they fought back. In 1985, Mayor Coleman Young, he launched this campaign, No More Devil's Night. It was a call to action, a defiant stand against the darkness that had gripped the city. You know how many people took to the streets? Over 8,000 police officers, firefighters, city workers, along with thousands upon thousands of volunteers, determined to reclaim the night.
Wait, hold on. Thousands of volunteers patrolling the streets. That's incredible. But wasn't that dangerous?
Absolutely. It was dangerous. But the people of Detroit, they were determined. They wanted to protect their city, their neighborhoods. They wore these orange vests, patrolled their blocks, reported any suspicious activity. They called themselves the Angels Night Patrol. And you know what? They turned the tide.
Angels Night versus Devil's Night. It's almost biblical, isn't it? Light battling darkness.
It really is, It really is. And in a way, maybe it was. It wasn't just logistics. It was defiance. They refused to be ruled by fear.
This is what I find so fascinating. You have these horrific fires driven by, desperation, anger, who knows what else. But then at the same time, you have this incredible wave of community resistance, of people putting themselves at risk to protect their city. That's a powerful contrast.
It really is. It speaks to the complex legacy of Devil's Night, a reminder of the city's darkest hour, but also of its resilience, the spirit of the people, never giving up.
Okay, so we've got this backdrop of urban decay, a night of terror that gripped the city, fire buffs captivated by the spectacle, citizens rising up to fight back. But how did it get to this point? I mean, where did this whole tradition of Devil's Night come from in the first place?
That's a great question. And to answer it, we need to look beyond Detroit, beyond the flames. We need to explore, the origins of mischief itself. Because Devil's Night, it didn't just appear out of thin air. It has roots in older traditions that in some ways are even more unsettling.
You're talking about Mischief Night, right? The night before Halloween, when the veil between the worlds thins and the urge to, cause a little chaos takes hold.
Exactly. And that's where we're headed next. A journey back in time to explore the shadowy origins of Mischief Night. A journey that might just shed some light on the darkness that consumed Detroit. Mischief Night, like you were saying, it's the night before Halloween. That night when the boundaries between the worlds, they sort of blur and, people get this urge to play pranks, to kind of push the limits. It's fascinating, really. It goes way deeper than most people think.
So it's more than just like kids in the suburbs TPing houses. There's like a darker history to it all.
Oh, absolutely. Mischief Night, or, well, versions of it, they can be traced back centuries to, like, ancient Celtic traditions, even earlier. It was often connected to, harvest festivals, those celebrations of the changing seasons, times when the veil between the worlds was believed to be thin, and spirits could just roam freely.
So this idea of a night where, like, the rules don't really apply, where mischief is not just allowed but almost, like, expected, that's been around for a while. A long while.
Exactly. And it wasn't always about harmless pranks either. Some of the historical accounts we have of Mischief Night, they're downright eerie.
Really? Like,
yeah.
What? Give me an example.
Well, in some parts of Europe, the belief was that on Mischief Night, spirits of the dead could actually come back to the world of the living. So people would leave, like offerings, food and drinks outside their homes to appease the spirits, ward off bad luck, that kind of thing.
Okay, so that's a little spooky, I'll give you that. But I'm still not seeing the connection to what happened in Detroit, that chaos.
Well, think about it this way. You've got this night where societal norms are, well, they're relaxed, right? Mischief is expected. Then add in poverty, unemployment, and, well, social unrest. It's not hard to imagine things escalating.
So you're saying Devil's Night in Detroit, it was like a twisted, amplified version of Mischief Night.
Yeah, you could say that. The urge to disrupt, to rebel, that underlying impulse, it was similar. But in Detroit, those impulses were fueled by something much darker, something more intense. It wasn't just playing pranks. It was lashing out at a system that many felt had failed them, let them down.
It's a chilling thought, but it makes sense. You've got this tradition of mischief, this night where the lines are blurred, and then you combine it with that sense of, hopelessness and anger.
Yeah.
It's a recipe for disaster.
And disaster is what they got. Hundreds of fires, night after night, turning Detroit into a scene from a nightmare. But you know what? Out of all that darkness, something remarkable happened.
You're talking about those Angels Night Patrols, right? The volunteers. Risking their own safety to protect their city. Did it actually work, though? I mean, how do you stop that much chaos?
It was incredible. Thousands of people, ordinary people, came together to take back their streets. They patrolled. They reported suspicious activity. They created this visible presence that it deterred arsonists.
So they really did reclaim the night.
They did. The fires, they dropped dramatically. Devil's Night, it slowly started to lose its hold on the city. It shows the power of a community,
Yeah.
People coming together, fighting back against fear, against despair.
It's an amazing story.
Yeah.
But it does make you wonder, what about those who were setting the fires? I mean, were they ever caught? What motivated them to do that?
A lot of the arsonists, they were never identified, unfortunately. It's a mystery that still hangs over the city. And as for their motives, it's probably a complicated mix of factors. Some, maybe they were just looking for thrills, taking advantage of the chaos to be destructive.
But earlier, you said that Devil's Night was fueled by something deeper than that, right? Something darker.
Right. For a lot of them, it was an expression of rage, a way to strike back at a system they felt had abandoned them. Those abandoned buildings, they became targets almost like symbols of their frustration and despair.
That's haunting. It really makes you wonder, could it happen again? Could another city, another community just fall victim to that kind of darkness?
That's a question we all have to consider, isn't it? Because the conditions that led to Devil's Night in Detroit, poverty, inequality, social unrest, those conditions, they haven't gone away. They still exist in many parts of the world.
So even though Devil's Night is, well, largely a thing of the past in Detroit, the potential for that kind of darkness, it's still out there, lurking in the shadows.
Yeah, it is. And that brings us back to Mischief Night. Back to the question of how traditions evolve, how they can be twisted, manipulated, how a simple impulse for mischief can, under the wrong circumstances, turn into something sinister, something truly dark.
So are you saying Mischief Night is inherently dangerous? That we should be afraid to, celebrate Halloween?
Not at all. Traditions are part of what makes us human. They connect us to our past, to our communities. They can bring joy and celebration. But we do need to be aware of the potential for darkness, to understand how traditions can be distorted, how they can be used for the wrong purposes, and to be vigilant, to protect our communities from the forces that would exploit them.
So as we head into Halloween, with all the costumes and candy and mischievous fun, what should we be thinking about? What lessons should we take from the history of Devil's Night?
I think the most important lesson is that even in the darkest times, even when faced with chaos, there's always hope. The people of Detroit, they proved that. They fought back, they reclaimed their city, they showed the world that a community can be resilient, that we can overcome.
That's a powerful message. But also, I don't know, a little unsettling.
Yeah,
because it means we might need that resilience, that we need to be ready to fight back. It makes you wonder what other shadows are out there, just waiting for the right moment to emerge.
That's a question each of us has to wrestle with. The darkness is always there, always lurking. But so is the light. And it comes down to the choices we make, the actions we take. Those are what determine which force wins in the end.
So we were talking about Mischief Night, right? And how this tradition, I mean, it's often seen as harmless fun, but it has this, like, way darker history than people realize.
It really does.
Like, I don't know, it's like looking at a poisonous plant, you know?
Yeah.
Beautiful on the surface, but hiding something dangerous underneath.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, because when you trace Mischief Night back, to its roots, you find all these ancient fears, superstitions, rituals meant to, like, appease spirits, ward off evil, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So it's more than just kids, throwing eggs or teepeeing houses. It's like a night when all those ancient fears, those anxieties, they come to the surface.
Right. And it makes sense, when you think about it. A night connected with mischief and mayhem, evolving alongside a holiday like Halloween, with its themes of death, the supernatural, those blurred lines between worlds.
Halloween itself has a pretty dark history, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rooted in those old Celtic festivals like Samhain. When the veil between the worlds was thinnest, it's almost like, I don't know, it's almost like Mischief Night became this way to act out those ancient fears, to make them real.
That's an interesting way to look at it, and it makes you wonder, if those fears, those deep-seated anxieties about the unknown, are they, like, part of us, just waiting for the right moment to come out?
And in Detroit, with all its problems, social and economic, those anxieties, well, they found a pretty destructive way to express themselves.
They did. Devil's Night became a night when all those simmering tensions, those feelings of frustration and despair, it just boiled over. This terrifying spectacle of violence and destruction. It's a scary example of how a tradition, even one that starts out playful, can be, twisted, become something much darker.
It makes you wonder, what other traditions, what other customs we have might be hiding those darker impulses. Are we all just like one bad day away from letting our inner demons out?
That's a question we all have to think about. But I think the story of Devil's Night, it reminds us that we can't take our safety, our security for granted. The darkness is always there, lurking at the edges.
So what are we supposed to do? Should we be, like, afraid to celebrate Halloween? Should we be suspicious of every kid who comes to our door in a costume?
No, fear isn't the answer. Awareness is. Being aware of the power of tradition, of how darkness can creep into even the most lighthearted things, being aware of our own capacity for both good and evil. And I think most importantly, being aware of the need for vigilance, for community, for, standing together against the things that could consume us.
So as we head into this Halloween season with all the spooky decorations and costumes and everything, what should we be thinking about? What can we learn from Devil's Night?
The biggest lesson, I think, is remembering that even when things are really bad, when you're faced with chaos, there's always hope. The people of Detroit, they showed us that. They fought back, they reclaimed their city, and they showed everyone what it means to be resilient, that we can overcome anything, even the darkest times.
That's a good message to remember. But also, it's kind of unsettling, right? Because it means we might need that resilience, that we need to be ready to fight back against the darkness. It makes you think, what else is out there? What other shadows are waiting to come out?
That's something we each have to grapple with, I think. The darkness, it's always there, but so is the light. And in the end, it's our choices, our actions that decide which one wins, which one prevails.
That's a pretty powerful thought to leave our listeners with. As we head into Halloween, into the realm of ghosts and goblins and all that, let's remember Devil's Night, and let's be ready to face the darkness, both in ourselves and in the world.
And let's remember that, the human spirit, it's strong. We have the power to overcome challenges together.
Yeah.
Because that's what really beats the darkness. Our willingness to stand together, to help each other, and to shine a light into the shadows.
That's a good thing to remember, not just on Halloween, but all year round. Thanks for being here with us on this deep dive into Devil's Night. Stay safe out there. And remember, sometimes the most haunting stories, they're the ones that remind us that we're capable of both darkness and light.